You're listening to The Bountiful Yogi, a podcast where soul meets practice and where we explore what it means to live, lead, and love from a place of deep alignment. I'm Heather, and I created this space as part of Sea Life as a Muse, a platform for storytelling, healing, and embodiment for people who feel deeply and are doing their best to live with intention. Whether you're a seeker, a healer, a teacher, a creative, or someone simply navigating the world with an open heart, I'm so glad you're here. However you got here, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. It means the world to me that you're here. These episodes are meant to be short and digestible, little pockets of perspective. And if you feel inclined, you can read the blog that inspired today's episode at sealifeasamuse.com or on Substack. Let's take a breath together and begin. In this episode, we're talking about the path of awakening, or what some might call enlightenment. When I first stepped onto this path, I didn't feel enlightened. I felt tangled, confused, uncertain. And to be truthful, I didn't even know I was on a path. It wasn't some big aha moment or spiritual lightning bolt. It was more like stumbling, pausing, questioning, realizing that the life I was living didn't quite match the truth I was carrying inside. And that's often how awakening begins. Not with clarity, but with discomfort. Not with certainty, but with curiosity. Growing up in the Western world, I was molded by expectations of success, productivity, and conformity. And to be completely honest, with the way the world feels lately, the conflict, the fear, the grief, I often find myself revisiting those old thought patterns. So the question I keep asking myself, and maybe you're asking too, is this: how do we break free from the grip of fear and the systems of control that have shaped us? And how do we release the old patterns and embrace a higher state of consciousness, individually and collectively? At one time, I didn't understand why anyone would stay in a suppressed mindset. But then I realized I was one of them. We all are in some way, and that acknowledgement changed everything. It was books like The Four Agreements and The Alchemist that first cracked open the door for me, offering glimpses of a life beyond fear and conditioning, but they were just the beginning. Over time, other works found their way to me, books like The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, which helped me understand how trauma lives in the body and how healing requires more than just mindset. Then came Perfectly Imperfect by Baron Baptiste, which reminded me that the messiness of the journey is part of the transformation. The Well Lived Life by Gladys McGarey reintroduced me to the wisdom of longevity, purpose, and living with soul. And Meditations from the Mat by Rolf Gates. That book invited me to bring spiritual practice off the yoga mat and into every corner of my daily life. It helped me see that yoga isn't separate from activism or healing or love. It's the thread that connects them. There are so many others, too many to name, but all of them have served as catalysts, inviting me to unlearn, to soften, to remember. They reminded me that writing, whether through books, blogs, or journaling, has the power to shift us, to wake us up, to pull us out of autopilot and reconnect us with what matters most. Yoga was another turning point for me. At first, yoga was just physical, a workout, a stretch, a release. But the more I practiced, the more I listened, and what I heard changed everything. I started to realize that yoga wasn't just about asana, it was a philosophy, a way of being, a guide toward compassion, presence, and purpose. And once I started tuning in beyond the pose, I began letting go of perfectionism and striving. I softened, I listened, and I began to heal. Throughout history, societies have been structured to keep individuals in check through traditional beliefs, authoritarian systems, and economic structures that prioritize control and inequality. The result? A world where personal growth is sidelined, creativity is stifled, and human potential is suppressed. But if these systems were created by people, they can be recreated by people. So I ask again, How do we begin to unravel these deeply ingrained systems? How do we break free from old patterns that have restricted growth for generations? Awakening isn't a destination, it's a journey. It's often nonlinear, sometimes messy, always sacred. And for me, there are four elements that guide this process: self realization. Who are we beyond what we've been told to be? Critical thinking. Can we question what we were taught, even when it's uncomfortable? Empathy and compassion. Can we connect, soften, and move beyond the illusion of separation? Collective responsibility. Can we hold ourselves accountable, not just for our own healing, but for the healing of the collective? Awakening isn't about escaping the world, and it's about re entering it clearer, softer, more present. What an awakened society looks like. Let's take a breath and imagine. What would it feel like to live in a society rooted in awakening instead of suppression? A place where education is holistic, where children grow up learning not just facts to memorize, but how to think critically, how to feel deeply, how to create boldly, and how to stay connected to themselves. A place where governance is inclusive, where every voice matters, not just the loudest or the wealthiest, where decisions are made with compassion, not control. A place where living is sustainable, where the earth is treated as kin, not as something to exploit, where balance matters more than profit and care outweighs convenience. A place where culture flourishes, where difference is not just tolerated, but celebrated, and where innovation and tradition dance together in harmony. This isn't just idealism, it's vision. It's a blueprint of what's possible, and it's the kind of future we can seed right here, right now, with the choices we make today. As we awaken, we remember something important. We're not separate. We never were. The divisions we've been taught by race, class, borders begin to dissolve when we realize our shared humanity. That unity opens the door to global cooperation, shared wisdom, collective healing. Awakening doesn't isolate, it integrates. Here are practical steps toward the awakening path. So, what can we actually do? Awakening doesn't live only in ideas, it shows up in the way we move through our days and the choices we make when no one is watching. We can begin by coming back to mindfulness. Sometimes it's just one breath, sometimes it's a journal page at night, and sometimes it's pausing long enough to notice the quiet between the noise. These small moments matter. They teach us to listen, to soften, to respond instead of react. We can choose to stay open to learning, to read beyond our comfort zones, and to listen when it's easier to turn away, to unlearn what no longer serves. Growth is not about having all the answers. It's about staying curious enough to keep asking the questions. We can remember to root ourselves in community. Awakening is not a solo path, and it's built in circles and conversations, in the simple act of showing up for one another. Community steadies us, reminds us that healing is shared, reminds us that we belong. We can support systemic change through the words we speak, the votes we cast, the justice we stand for in our own small ways. Even small actions ripple outward, carrying our integrity into the collective. And finally, we can be mindful of how we spend our money. Where we choose to spend has power. Are we reinforcing systems rooted in harm or investing in businesses that honor the earth, uplift communities, and reflect the world we want to see? Money speaks loudly in our societies, and where we place it is a reflection of what we truly value. These aren't boxes to check off, they're practices to keep returning to. Each step, however small, makes a difference. This path from suppression to awakening is one we walk together. As Ram Dass said, we are all just walking each other home. So let's walk with curiosity, with courage, and with compassion. Let's co create a world that reflects the truth of who we are: connected, capable, and deeply, beautifully awake. If this episode resonated, I'd love to invite you to keep exploring this theme with us. You can find the full blog over at sealifeasamuse.com. And if you're craving community, come join us in Discord. We're sharing prompts, voice notes, and gentle check ins each week to help you root into your own rhythm. And if you're looking for quiet reflections between episodes, you can follow along on Blue Sky or join us on Substack. Until next time, stay bountiful and always see life as a muse.